Discussions around inclusion and equalities are important in early years as they directly impact children's development and learning across their lifetime and will have an impact on society as a whole. However, it's something which many of us tiptoe around because, well, honestly, we're often worried about doing or saying the wrong thing. Even with the best intentions, we can reinforce stereotypes without even realizing it. So I wanted to discuss with you some ways we can tread more confidently in the right direction. So first of all, can you explain the difference between equality and equity and give examples of how this might look in a setting? For example, supporting all children with special educational needs and disabilities.
Okay, so equality is usually thought of by everyone as being equal. And although this is a good thing in itself, even with the best will in the world, everyone isn't equal in one sense, because everyone's got different strengths and needs. And sometimes children have different barriers to learning as well. So when we think about what equality might look like in a setting, we could think that we need to offer all children access to the same resources in the same way. But let's think about this in terms of a setting. So if you imagine a setting that might have 2 to 4-year-old children, if they set up some sort of provocation or activity in a tough tray on a table, it looks really exciting and the children really want to play. But sadly, as it's on a table, several of the 2-year-olds find it really hard to reach into the tray. Their arms just aren't long enough. And, maybe you've got a child who might use a walking frame, for example, and they're unable to stand for a long period of time. And so actually, they'll find it difficult to access that activity as well. So the activity was kind of set up in order to allow all children to play. And in theory, you could say there was equality there. But in practice, when we really start to look at it, it wasn't equitable or fair because all the children didn't have the same opportunity to access the resources. So there were barriers in the way for some of the children. So I hope that sort of makes sense.
Yes.
So equity is about being truly inclusive and removing those barriers to learning. So in that scenario that I've just mentioned, if we actually put that tough tray on the floor, this will enable the 2-year-olds to reach more easily. And then the child with the walking frame who can't perhaps stand for very long, maybe they could kneel down or sit down and still engage with those resources for a lot longer because of the positioning of the resources. So I've also found an image, if that's okay, that I'm going to share because I think it's quite helpful when we're thinking about equity, and it helps to show the difference between equity and equality.
Great.
So hopefully you can see this image now. And what you can see here is a family, for example, who all want to go for a bike ride. So what we have in the top there is everyone's been given the same bike to ride. And actually, this is really unhelpful because there are some circumstances where everyone being given exactly the same thing doesn't suit everyone. So not all of these people are able to ride that bike. So in the second bit at the bottom where it says equity, what we've actually been given there are bikes according to their individual needs. So they've been given a bike according to their ability or their size. And in this instance, the whole family can now enjoy a bike ride. So hopefully that really sort of helps to make it, bring it to life and make it make a little bit more sense for us.
Yeah, no, it definitely does. Yeah. Both examples are useful, yeah. So, I mean, when we talk about equality, then is it wrong to approach things from that angle? Should we just always consider equity instead of, or?
I don't think it's wrong in the sense that, I mean, we have the Equality Act that we've got to be thinking about. Yeah. So, that's very relevant in our settings. And I'll just very quickly, if that's okay, fill people in on the Equality Act in case they're not quite sure what that might be. But that came into place in 2010, and it was basically there to protect people who might be more vulnerable to discrimination. So it's legally shielding different groups of people from from discrimination in the workplace and in society, and obviously that includes early childhood settings and schools as well. And it talks about the different ways that it's unlawful to treat somebody, and it outlines different groups of people that might be more vulnerable. So it covers 9 different groups who have what they call protected characteristics. So those groups are age, being or becoming a transsexual person, being married or in a civil partnership, being pregnant or having a child, disability, race, and race they're including colour, nationality, ethnic or national origin in that, religion, belief or even lack of belief, sex and sexual orientation. So it's quite a big list. But of course, despite legislation being in place, sometimes discrimination does occur and stereotypes are reinforced even in our childhood settings. Right. So we still need to be thinking about equality, but perhaps remembering images like this that help remind us what real inclusion is, and that's looking at it through that equity sort of lens.